Well, in this very first episode of the Unfinished podcast, I am delighted to be welcoming Janine Mathó. She's my friend. She's my sometimes business partner. She's a coach. She's the author of articles and a forthcoming book. She's held senior and impactful leadership roles in education and publishing at iconic institutions. But above all, she's someone I look up to in terms of the work she does on herself and for others. She's my yardstick and she's my inspiration. So it's fitting that we begin with her on this Unfinished podcast. She's unfinished, I'm unfinished, and we all are. That's why we're here. Janine, welcome, and thank you for coming to be guest number one on this venture into what and how we're working on ourselves.
Thank you, Claire. Wow, that was quite an emotional opening. I really appreciate that.
Good. It's much deserved. So let's begin. As I've always said, this is supposed to be a list of questions that elicit relatively deep and reflected and worked on answers while also being spontaneous. A tall order, but let's play and see what happens. Janine, I'd love to know, what is something nobody would ever guess about how you grew up?
It's such a great question. And you sent over questions with just enough time for me to have some thinking on them without actually scripting, which I really liked. So, I think what's so easy is when we meet people who are whatever, 30, 40, 50, 60 on forward, we tend to think of them as who they are right now, right? We tend to think of this person that's in front of us. And so I've often been read as, well-educated, well put together, must have had this wonderful upbringing, et cetera, right? All kinds of privileges. And while there were some privileges, sure, I grew up in a really chaotic household, a really difficult household, an abusive household. And when my parents divorced when I was 17 going on 18, I was at university and I was left. I was financially abandoned, emotionally abandoned, and left to sort myself out, basically. And I don't think most people would guess that about me. And again, when we meet people, we see who they are today, and we don't think about where they came from. But for me, where I came from very much has shaped where I am today.
You're right. I'm sure that very few people would guess that, but it shapes us, whatever we come from. And I'm sure that
even if we tried to forget it, when we tried to forget it or push it down, right? It's still there.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. So thinking beyond that, family background of contrast and shock and all kinds of other things, what would you say is the best advice that your family or those close to you gave you when you were younger, and or indeed the worst?
Yeah, it's another good question. I guess that some of the advice came from teachers, and not really like a line that I can say I remember, but I had a lot of support from teachers to be independent, to step out of my home, to find my way. And I really had a lot of support for that, which was probably difficult for them because my mom was a teacher and she taught in my school. But I could be honest with a few, and those few helped me and gave me the strength to say, yeah, it is fine to be independent, to step away from situations that are not ideal for you, even if that situation is your home. And I think that was the strength that I was really grateful to have been given then. And then advice from family. This is a funny one. My mother always said, you can do anything you set your mind to, or something like that, or you can become anything you want. And I always felt like that was really hollow, actually. Sure, can you become anything you want? Possibly, if you're willing to become the person who does that. And I think that's the part that she probably didn't know about, or appreciate, and definitely
or maybe
didn't
model.
Model or have that depth and know, and I understand where she came from and her upbringing, so this is not a blaming thing, right? But sure, you can live many lives that you can dream of if you're willing to become the person who does that and do the work on yourself to do that, right? And yeah, there's limits and it's hard. So I don't know that that was great advice.
Hmm. To what extent were you aware of that paradox at the time of hearing such advice, or has the irony only really emerged for you subsequently?
I think the ironies emerged subsequently, but actually, I always just felt like it was hollow. Sort of like it just didn't hold anything, right? It was like, seriously, I can become anything I want. Are you kidding me? I was like, I could do this or I could do this. Are you sure? I'm not very good at this, really. So I just sort of, it never really connected or clicked for me.
And yet you chose a pretty brilliant set of studies and career and so on. So, what was on your mind as you first chose and set out on that path to becoming a professional?
As I first, you mean very,
Mm-hmm.
very beginning? I mean,
Yeah.
first was really like coming out of university and having done it in 4
Mm-hmm.
years, having worked 50 hours a week, like really, and not knowing, I know now, but didn't know then that I was in this sort of survival mode pattern. So for me, it was really about like, where can I work and get paid? Like a real job.
Mm-hmm.
But the world that I knew and valued was education, partly because my mom was a teacher. I grew up in schools, right? And I grew up in an area with many schools and many universities, and spent time with friends at boarding schools. So like I just thought, well, schools and universities seem like harmonious places and places where maybe I can find a home, which was another
Mm-hmm.
thing I needed, some kind of
Mm-hmm.
community and home. For the first job was literally at Phillips Academy as a on a fellowship for teaching, and I literally got a home, which was very helpful, and a place to eat, which was also helpful,
Yeah, not
and a
just
salary.
symbolic. Yeah.
Yeah, and a salary and a community, and got to spend time on photography and writing, which was my passions, and teach others about that and support
Mm.
international students. So it was a wonderful, safe space community to begin to grow in. Um, but I think in the beginning, it wasn't more strategic than that.
Mm. Ah, very often we're not that strategic, but nevertheless, you brought in some values that have clearly stayed with you till this point in your career. You may well have gone on to other more prestigious institutions, roles. You worked in publishing. You've done all kinds of senior leadership positions. You've been through burnout and been very open about it. You've written a book about that, which is coming out, and how to survive and do better around being well in life and work. As you think about what you do for a living now, what do you love about it?
I love, and there are many hard things about what I do now, right? So it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
easier to, in many ways, to have a job and have a secure paycheck and have a scope of work that's told to you and a job description and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do love about where I am now is that my work is focused primarily on one question, and that is about how can ambitious people live and build meaningful, fulfilling lives and lasting success without losing themselves, without losing what matters most to them, and without burning out along the way. And that comes directly from my own experience with burnout and having been hit with a ton of existential questions all at the same time.
Mm,
If you remember, my mom had also died right at the same time I went with
absolutely.
burnout
Yeah.
in a car crash. So that question, I think, is the big question that emerged for me and was the reason why I started reading and focusing more on neuroscience and interviewing people
Mm,
about their experiences with career pivots and reinvention. And I think it's still there now. I'm so curious about finding answers to this. And my book is an attempt to answer that question and with some frameworks and some tools and some support for folks. But it's also why I love coaching and advising,
mm,
and teaching, because essentially at the heart of it all is that question which other people are trying to figure out for themselves in some shape or form.
mm. It's a quest for a holy grail of some kind, which we'll never quite
Yeah.
reach. But you're putting the ingredients together and bringing out stories and development
Yeah. Yeah,
for others
I
and
love that
from
you can,
others.
yeah, and I love that with a question, at least for me, you can stretch in a lot of directions.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah, which is why you're writing a book rather than an article, and turning that into a whole universe. just as anyone, you must have less fun parts of life and work. How do you find that you handle the stuff that isn't so wonderfully fulfilling and exciting for you?
What are those parts?
Good question. I love that, and I'm with
You mean
you. There's
like
very little.
tax
Could be.
returns,
I mean,
paperwork?
that's probably the
Is that
ultimate
what you mean?
less fun part, right? Though I have to admit that I get this strange kick out of my 1 day per year of tax filing. There's a sort of, there's a rainbow and a pot of gold, right?
Yeah.
But no, I guess for some coaches or writers, it's about business development. We love coaching, but we don't so much love that process of worrying whether we're ever going to get a new client again or whatever it might be. How do
Yeah.
you how do you balance and play with the different parts?
I think I think now it's not that I find all parts fun, but I find most parts part of the quest.
Mm-hmm.
So it's taken a different shape then. I think in the early days when I just started down this path and was a newer coach and needed to look for clients, I think there were so many things I felt like I didn't know. And I think now I'm much more comfortable saying, I mean, because I keep hitting things I don't know, because I keep raising the bar, keep going to the edge of the comfort zone, I'm getting more and more comfortable with just being okay not knowing how to do something
Mm.
and figuring it out. I will say that, there's sometimes emotional process that goes with that, right? Which is like a little bit of a slump before you kind of say, right, but this is part of learning. And actually,
Mm.
I can do this. Or I pick up the phone and call you, or I call another
Mm.
person who inspires me also, right? And they say, no, I've done this, I've done that, and it
Mm.
just feels like if you connect with others and you ask questions and you're not afraid to not know, that actually
Mm.
it's okay, and it's actually also okay to feel like crap before you're making a leap of growth, if I'm allowed to swear on a podcast.
You can swear
If
away.
just before, before you're
No.
trying, or if you're trying to engage in something you haven't done before or that you feel is low energy for you, it's
Mm.
okay to feel that
Mm.
way. Actually, I
Mm.
used to sort of beat myself up about feeling that way and be like, come on, come on, come on. And actually now I just give myself the space. And if
One
it's
of the
not happening that
things
day, it's not.
Yeah. One of the things that I see in colleagues and clients is that when you're on a quest as a leader to know everything and never to say, I don't know, that's when you burn out. That's when you get so lonely at the top that it's untenable. If you're not willing
Yeah.
not to know, you can't
Yeah.
possibly learn something else, become something else, do something else.
Yeah.
So, in fact, this has almost a double meaning for you in the context of the work you do as well as the way you are day to day.
And it's a growth, right? Because when I was in
Mm.
corporate, it's not that I was afraid to not know, but I was afraid to not have answers because having
Mm-hmm.
answers seemed important, right?
Yes.
Having
Right
answers
now.
seemed like a criteria for being at the top, if you will.
Mm.
And actually, yes and no, right? Being there means being able to ask the right questions of the right people. Doesn't mean you have to know, and that's a growth for me personally. But I think
Mm.
it's also like if I were to sort of put it in a leadership context, I say that's the difference between high achieving and high performing.
Yeah. Nice. Now, I'm going to ask you a question now to which you may not have an answer. What's your greatest weakness or blind spot in your leadership?
Yes, I'd still have an answer for that. It's the same one I've always had. I think it's bringing people along, and I'm quite good at the big picture and the vision, and even putting structure to the vision and working with people and being really collaborative. But sometimes when you're the visionary, you can be in your head, and you can be so far. Like you may have had 2 days of thinking, and if you're a really good thinker, 2 days ahead is
Mm.
like 2 months ahead for other people.
Mm.
And so remembering to um, bring people along as I'm thinking, or slow down my thinking, not because they're stupid, but because I actually haven't told them anything yet, right? Slow down enough to communicate and to bring them into the thinking and to collaborate in that way as well. Strengthens the work, but also and empowers people and gives them agency, but also makes it more fun, less isolating as a leader. So that's something I think I still work on. And I'm trying to I am much better at it than I used to be, but
Mm.
still working on it.
What are the telltale signs that it's coming up?
Uh, it's different now because I'm a solopreneur, right? So it's a little different, but I do collaborate with people. So
Of course.
I would say it's if I haven't, well, I don't do it so much anymore, but I think before it would be people
Mm.
asking all kinds of questions, or people looking confused, or people resisting,
Mm.
and just sort of being a bit flabbergasted and or annoyed. And so a lot of it is getting an emotional reaction from other people, well
Mm.
deserved, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't always pinpoint it's because you've rushed ahead.
Yeah.
So it's on you to realize,
Mm.
oh, wait, I'm over here. I've left them over here. It's only been 2 days, but whoa, got to bring them
Mm.
along.
Mm.
And which means we may not end up where I was, right? We may end up over here instead. That's okay.
Oh. Well, if you're 2 days ahead, there's time to course correct, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, or change the course, frankly.
Exactly. Mm. For sure.
Yeah. I do think that comes from years of sort of that, again, that high achieving pattern where if you
Mm-hmm.
think you're supposed to have all the answers
Mm.
and you think you're supposed to set the vision, then you don't want to not do that, right? You want to do that and then bring it to people, but that's
Mm.
that's not very collaborative.
Mm. Okay. Well, it sounds as though that in itself has been a big revelation to you as you see the pattern and recognize it again and again. Beyond that, what's been your biggest aha moment, as it were, in
mm
in leading yourself in life?
I think burning out was the biggest aha moment in my life.
Kind of
I
expecting
mean,
that.
yeah, I could always work quickly through scenarios. I could handle lots of difficult challenges in my own life and at work. Um, I just would work harder, work longer, you know. I didn't realize that I do have limits and that my body does have needs, and my mind does, and my heart has needs, all of which cannot be ignored for massive periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also, from that, I think the biggest aha moment was learning that there's a whole nother way to live and lead and love. Like there's just this whole other way of being that I was never exposed to. And I'm not sure many of the people I worked around, frankly, had been. But again, if you're sort of raised as that like high achiever, grades, get to the next level, kind of chase success, it's kind of built in there, right? And you're not really thinking that actually a burnout. And granted, this was 5 years ago when I hit burnout, almost six, and so the conversation wasn't so public as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's changed, so that's a good thing. I think people are a little bit more aware of it. But yeah, I didn't know that there was this whole other way to live and be. I didn't know how much stewarding your energy, sort of physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. I didn't know how much that really contributed to you being well and leading well into performance. And yeah, it's wonderful to see that there's this whole other side, right? It's like black and white, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. So a big aha. Um,
Mm.
when you get that moment of clarity, when you got it 5, 6 years ago, would it be reasonable to say that that might be also a point at which you realized how much you had been letting yourself down, letting standards down? Was it a failure? Was it a victory? How did it show up?
It's a really good question. I don't know if it was failure, right? Maybe. A lot of us live like that all the
Mm.
time. And we don't think we're failing when we're earning our paycheck and giving up our weekends for the job and not quite going to our children's performances, or
Mm.
but we've bought the car, we've bought the house, and we have the marriage and whatever other things that matter to you. We're going on
Mm.
the holidays, or the designer clothes or the nice restaurant or whatever it is, as you're working and you feel like you can provide for
Mm.
yourself and people you love.
Mm.
I don't think you think like that. And so, was it a big failure? Maybe. But if so, then it's the best failure I've ever had because
Absolutely. Great big
I
silver
learned
lining.
so much from it, and I
Mm.
keep learning, and I think it's terrific. And Yeah, so I don't know if it was, I mean, I would say in the beginning it felt embarrassing because in the beginning, first, I would say first 8 weeks out of work on medical leave was felt humiliating. Felt
Mm.
like, who the heck am I? And other
Mm.
people wondered who I was too.
Yeah, big identity shift.
Where's the Janine who's just gonna like get back up?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
yeah.
KO. Like I was
Mm.
done. And yeah, I think friends who came over to see me and I just stayed in my pajamas were pretty much like, who is this?
Mm.
So it was really difficult. It was really humiliating. It was personally challenging to be stripped of a title, to be, I mean, not no one took
Mm.
it from me. I left. I was
Yeah,
on medical
yeah.
leave, right? The
You
doctor was
stripped
like, you're not fit
yourself
to
of the
work. You
title.
need
Yes.
time,
Yeah.
and you need bereavement counseling, you need all these things. But stepping out meant no more email, no more meetings, no more
Mm.
phone calls, no more title, no more, whatever. And you
Mm.
sort of sit around and go, what am I going to do with myself all day? And who, and eventually that gets to, who am
Who am
I?
I?
How did I get here?
Mm.
Why do I do what I do every day?
Mm.
What could that be different? And how could that be different? And so, that's quite humbling,
Indeed.
quite humbling.
Takes you,
But in a
strips
good
you
in
right
a
back
good
to
way.
zero. Yeah.
It does.
Gives you a
Yeah, it
chance
really strips
to
you.
rebuild eventually, to work on yourself. So I'd love to know,
That's the
what are you
positive spin.
working on? Yes,
That's the
absolutely.
positive spin.
And we're 6 years on, and I've known you for much of the
Yeah,
time in between. So
yeah,
I've seen
yeah,
other sides of it. But right now,
yeah.
let's focus on what you're working on in terms of yourself. What are you creating? Who are you creating?
Hmm. I think right now I'm being challenged in a lot of new ways. So, I mean, I've just finished writing, not published yet, the first book. Been asked to co-author a second. Got a workbook I need to get done. Um, and now I had said to you earlier, I'm starting to ask people for testimonials. I'm starting to think about, where do I want to speak? Who might be interested in this work? These sort of next step things that,
Mm-hmm.
when you're writing, you're down here, and now you start to look up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's pushing into another new edge of comfort zone. And for me, I think the thing, and I think it happens for a lot of people at this place, is also the fear of other people's opinions comes back. Like, you think you've gotten over fear of other people's opinions, and there it is, you know. And it's not, and it can paralyze you for a couple of days. I know for me it has. Like, I need to ask for testimonials. Oh my gosh, who am I going to ask, and how am I going to do this? And having some calls again, reaching out to people to ask, how did you do it? What if you didn't know the person? What do I say? Asking my publisher, all this stuff. But eventually, when you realize that actually this is normal, in the world, not the world that I've been in, but in this world,
Mm-hmm.
actually it's fine to ask. And actually, wouldn't it be quite selfish if I kept the book that I wrote for everyone else all to myself? Right. So
Oh, yeah.
so
Old
get my
and
butt out
important
there.
chestnut. Yeah.
Yeah. So get out there. I mean, that's the point of the book, is to help people answer these kinds of questions and to provide them
Indeed.
with the framework to do it. So I have to get over my fear of other people's opinions as I
Mm-hmm.
keep pushing the edges of my own comfort zone. So that's something I'm definitely working on. And I think also, um, it goes hand in hand with the context, is is managing myself. So I'm pretty good at managing myself, actually, but keeping myself in a place where I'm not going to burn out, because it's just so easy to keep
Oh,
working,
yeah. You're
especially
tempted.
when you love what, right? So people
Mm.
always say, oh, but I love what I'm doing, so it's okay that I'm working
Mm.
so hard. I mean, maybe. Are you sure about that?
Mm.
Because if you're really checking in with yourself, you can sense when your body's just done. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're always in overwork, you don't feel it
Yeah.
until it's too late, right? And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
have that tendency. So just as I move into this phase and I'm starting to get really excited about it, it's
Mm.
taking me almost a lot more effort to manage myself and say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
pacing, right?
Yeah.
And care.
Beautiful. So it sounds
Mm.
as though, I mean, we know, the world knows, I know, you know, that you're a pretty worked on person, and you're constantly looking for new things to challenge that. What are you still scared to work on? What's
I
that
saw that
secret
question.
thing off there?
I don't know if I have something I'm scared to work on. There might be things I don't know I need to work on. Like I haven't hit that level of awareness yet. That's quite possible. But I don't have anything I'm completely scared of working on. Um, in fact, most of the time I'm quite curious to find new things
Mm.
because
Mm.
there's so much. It's because we're all a work in progress, and so when you spot it, or when someone else spots it for you, and you're like, oh right, So I mean, if I had to ask my family, they'd probably say two things. One would be perfectionism, which I think I've largely given up, but I have a really close relationship with excellence that comes from my upbringing. And so it's hard.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm getting better at it. And it's something I continue to work on because I do like things just so. And that I think goes into the other piece that they might say, which is it's okay if it's not always just so. Like if someone else does it and it doesn't look the way I want it to look, it's okay.
Yeah.
So those are things I know I need to work on. I'm not probably as consciously working on them right now because it's less relevant to where I am. But when my children are visiting, they hit me.
Oh yeah,
they,
the
they
tellers
come
of
right
truth.
back up.
The candid
Yeah,
tellers of
they
truth.
come right back up.
Sounds as though
Exactly.
also what you're saying is that for you at least, curiosity is the antidote to fear.
Yes, I think curiosity is greatly undervalued. I definitely
Mm,
didn't
I'm with you.
identify it in myself before, although I have always been a curious person. But it is something that now I do try to get curious about. What's this edge I'm hitting? And why am I hitting it? And what's going on? Because there's usually some telltale signs. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
hitting an edge of, say, and I always keep saying the edge of my comfort zone, but if am hitting an edge of myself or usually my comfort zone, there are telltale signs.
Yeah.
And, because fear starts to come back in, or I
Mm,
avoid something that I'm trying to do that matters
yeah.
to me, or I'm not taking care of myself as well. And I can
Mm,
see it, and I'm like, wait a minute,
yeah.
what's going on here? Like, and it usually it doesn't take more than, I mean, sometimes it takes an hour to fix, but sometimes it can take 3 days,
Mm.
to kind of
And
say,
maybe
okay,
sometimes it takes 3 days to notice it as well.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's all
Mm,
it's an ongoing process.
yeah. You're unfinished. We've been conversing for quite a while already, but I'd love to know what's your favorite way to start off a conversation?
I do like to ask people, how are you? And then ask them, how are you really?
Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
usually people are like, yeah, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. I'm like, really? How are you really?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like,
Yeah.
oh. And yeah, because I don't want to hear the superficial answer, actually. If I ask
Mm,
the question, I really want to
yeah.
know, how are you? For
Yes.
real.
Yes. And how often do you find you get the real answer?
Most of the time.
Mm.
I
Probably
think people are
partly
often
because you
surprised.
select the people that you interact with, but also because it is a
I
very
just think most
relatable
people,
question, right? We
yeah, but I
appreciate
also
being
think
asked the really version.
I think so, but I think most people don't ask it. So when you do
Exactly.
ask it,
Yeah.
then people are like, "Oh, you actually want to know?" Well, let me tell you,
Yes.
sometimes you get more than you asked than
There
you
is
thought
that.
you were asking for. Depends on the person.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Mm,
that's okay,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I do because I actually do want to know, and I also would
Mm.
like them to want to know about me.
Oh, there's
That
that
doesn't
too.
always happen. That
It
doesn't
doesn't.
always happen. That's
It
okay.
doesn't. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about books. We both read a lot.
Mm,
We both think a lot. We write.
so many books.
If you think about all the books that you've read, and what's one that's really taught you a lesson that you love?
I don't know all the books I've read. There's too many. So, I mean, there are some that I always go back to. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe those are some ones. So one
Mm-hmm.
is Composing a Life by Mary Catherine Bateson, which I have up on my shelf.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very well worn copy, and I really loved that book because she chronicles the life of five women, but it's not really why I like it. I really love it because these women are all highly accomplished, and so like sort of have a plan in life. But yet what they sort of the awakening is that it's all about improvisation, and that there's this, I think especially with women, this notion, and I in my book I actually borrow the composing for a stage in my process, which is that we are composing our lives. And when you use that active word and you take away just living our lives, it's something more intentional. So even though it may all be about improvisation, there's intention. And so, yeah, best laid plans, improvisation, and composing, meaning taking ownership for. And so that really, really sits with me. I mean, my book is called Live Your Opus. And so that's a direct connection to that way. And I think maybe not in too much different, but is the artist's way, which lots of people will know, but fewer people will know in the business world, actually. But for me, even though that book is about sort of a path to creativity, for me, that's more about like challenge everything you were told about yourself, and challenge everything about what you were told about life, and challenge everything you were told about success. And ask those questions of yourself. And again, that's also kind of baked in to my book. Yeah, they stick with me, those books.
Yeah. Challenging.
There are others. There are so many.
Be a pain.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Actually,
be on a quest. Yeah. Who inspires you most, living or dead?
Yeah, I so difficult. I mean, I think people who are pursuing meaningful questions about human potential really inspire me. But if I had to pick a person, I would actually say my daughter. She's very inspiring to me. She's 26, and I just think this sort of level of self-mastery that she's at right now, and for those of you who might not know that term, it's like how well she knows and manages herself, like how well she's kind of overcome some of the things we've been talking about and worked on herself, even though we're all unfinished, is incredible to me. And I'm so very proud of her for that. And I can only imagine how different, for example, my life would have been had I been more like that at that age.
And I was going to say she's well ahead of most people's game.
Yeah,
age,
well ahead, and very steeped in her values, and her values as they relate in particular to sort of the future of humanity and our world, and living those. And I just think I'm just so inspired by that, because it's hard to live your values actually every day.
It is,
and we don't all do that. And so I'm quite inspired by her.
Many people don't even really have any conscious understanding of what their values are. So to be at that level of development, of finishedness at 26 is enormous. Let's get banal but important and talk about your morning routine. What's and this is not a TikTok video of get ready with me, but the idea is what's important. What are the basics that you must get in place at the beginning of your day for it to be a good day?
Yeah, so my mornings are all about my vitality and connection, but mostly vitality and self-connection and connection with my husband and my puppy. But really it's nourishment in terms of time. So giving myself some time in the morning to wake up, to think, to be with myself, with my partner. Nourishment in terms of food, so something healthy, my tea, but just having those like couple of quiet moments. Movement, super important to me. Exercise, whatever that means to you. For me, that's yoga and walking usually. In the summer, that might be swimming, and playing with my dog, like all kinds of just movement, joy. And for me also it's meditation. So really connecting with myself, with, I don't know if you would call it the source, just sort of connecting inward, and trying to cultivate the energy that I want to bring to my work and to my life and my people in my life that day, and to tap into the vision I have for myself for the future, and try to really kind of connect with that. So visualization and the meditation. So that's those things are pretty much non-negotiables. When I don't do them, I I
You're out
notice.
of sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I can almost always pinpoint it.
Mm,
So if I don't have time, it's a truncated version, or I move the meditation to nighttime or whatever. But
yeah.
if those things don't happen, preferably in the morning, I do notice. And yeah,
They're pillars. They're, they prop us up, right?
yeah, it's stability, isn't it?
Mm, mm. That said, what's your guilty pleasure?
Dark chocolate squares at night. I think that's what I mean, definitely. My husband and I have like two little squares. It's like, yeah, put the container away so we don't keep going.
And you live
Yeah,
as
and
I
I
do
and
in a
I like
country of very good dark chocolate, right?
absolutely, and I mean I like good crime drama. So it's not like it's all meditation and yoga and reading books and
Mm.
living an existential life. I do love a good crime drama as much as anybody, and yeah, and some little wine and like dark chocolate, sit around the fire, lovely, right?
Sounds
Um,
pretty good.
I think we all earn some guilty pleasures sometimes.
I think life would be terribly sad without them, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It is a life. We are composing it, so we can add dark chocolate in.
Indeed. The composers. What do you not want to share here?
Yeah, I don't know because I feel like I have shared. I'm
Mm.
pretty open about sharing. I feel like
Mm.
that's a wonderful thing that's come out of burnout, which I talk about in my book too, is that
Mm.
owning your story and being really comfortable with it. So back to the first question, I mean, part of why people used to read me the way they read me is because I never talked about my upbringing, never talked about my past. I didn't want people
Mm.
to know because
Yeah.
I was raised to keep the white picket fence outside, to keep it all looking nice and tidy on the outside and keep all whatever happened to you in. Um, and actually, that's the worst thing you can do. Owning your story is really powerful for you to be whole, first of all,
Yes.
because it's not about something being wrong with you. It's about owning your story, including the parts that you really didn't like, especially
Mm.
those.
Mm.
But to be whole, but also to be able to bring that into everything you do. It's okay. Like
Mm.
I think it's really powerful. And before I viewed it as a weakness. So there isn't anything I don't want to share here, I think in particular. I don't know. I'm
That's
kind of an
beautiful.
open book at this
That's
point.
all. You are. You
It's
are. You
quite a
are.
nice, honest way to live. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, if we were just to ask you one more time, what is the part of you that you feel is still unfinished? And what sort of pride or pleasure do you get out of that status?
Yeah, I mean, I have a close relationship with ambition too. And I think I am incredibly ambitious. And a lot of the people I worked with in corporate who have been continuing to climb, I think might look at me and say, "Oh, she's not as ambitious as she was because she doesn't have this title, or whatever." Actually, my ambition is massive, um,
Mm.
and yet I know there's time to get there. And so the part of me I think that's still unfinished, I guess, if you will, is like it's the part that can see it and knows that I don't yet know how to do all of those things. I don't yet know how to get there. I don't know who the people are who are going to help me get there. I don't know, but I know that that's where I'm going.
Mm.
It may look slightly different, whatever. So I think the unfinished is like, in a way, for me, exciting, which is, yeah, how am I going from there to there? And I know some people, when we coach, some people like, but I don't know how to get there. And it's like, but let's
Mm.
get really curious about how you might, and
Mm.
also let go a little of what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
So yeah, have it, but also let go a little and know that you absolutely are unfinished and you don't necessarily have everything that it takes or everything you're supposed to know yet to get there, but that doesn't
Mm.
mean that you won't by the time you get there, right? So, and
Yeah.
I like to feel the reason I'm proud of that, and I do feel like that across everything: meditation practice, yoga practice,
Mm.
cooking, writing books, like all of it. I feel like there's this other place that I probably can get to over time. Not because I have to be better at it, which is probably how I would have been, but
Mm.
because it's exciting to sort of keep growing.
Yeah.
And it's a different edge to that, right? So it's not about pushing myself. It's about, oh, wouldn't it be really cool when?
Mm.
Um, And I wonder what will happen if.
Mm.
And I guess why I'm proud of that is I tend to now often think about, this is going to sound silly maybe, but like my 90 something year old self, which I hope I get to,
Doesn't sound silly
looking
at all.
back and being like, wow, look at all of those cool seeds you planted. Some
Mm.
of them grew, some of them didn't. But wow, like look at
Yeah.
those seeds and look at, and so I never had that view before. Um, and I just sort of feel like, yeah, when people ask me, do you think you'll ever retire? People have asked me that question.
Mm.
And I can't imagine retiring in the traditional sense, because some people, you work and then you finish
Mm.
and then you just play all the time. And I think that's great, fine. You can play all the time. For me, I know I have to create all the
Mm.
time,
Mm.
which is a form of play, but different.
It is
And so, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, it's different. And so I think I'm proud of not knowing,
Mm-hmm.
proud of being curious of where I'm going, and totally cool with not knowing yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because I think I can't imagine what it would be like to be much, much older, having looked back and said, "Wow, you tried all these things." And
That's beautiful. I wonder also if there's a distinction to be made between the ambition that you alluded to, with a little bit of reticence, and
mm-hmm,
desire.
mm-hmm,
You know, a desire to keep on creating, planting seeds, playing. I
mm,
think both of us have working lives which feel an awful lot like play an awful lot of the time, which is just tremendous. Um, and so
it's
it's very
hard work though, right? It's
it's
hard
it's
work, this
it's
this
hard
form of
play.
play,
I
but it
tend to
is,
think
but
of it
it
as serious play.
yeah,
But yeah, it's taxing. I mean,
yeah,
I've just come back from 2 days of family business leadership,
yeah.
quarrels and tensions, and holding that space is tremendously difficult, but it's incredibly rewarding. And like you, I'm not done yet. We are not finished, right? There are so
No.
many levels to this unfinished thing. But you, Janine, are beautifully unfinished, and I'm
Oh,
terribly
thank you.
grateful to you for having come and played the game today.
And thank you for creating this platform for people to share, because it's important for people to know that what you see is not a finished product in any way ever.
Never, ever, ever. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Claire.